Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with dating and intimacy coach and creator of the art of feminine seduction, Alana McKenzie. She is that seductive coach that is always a strong, independent woman who didn't need a man, but the thing was she really wanted one. She searched high and low in multiple workplaces, through several educational institutions, and on 3 different continents. All she found were bad date stories, an accidental kidnapping, and the sincere belief that she was a failure in love. In an effort to fix herself, she dove into the mating, dating, and connection research. She applied the concept to her dating life, and things began to turn around immediately. She has a great story. Enjoy this interview.
All right, Alana, thank you for taking a minute out. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah, me too. Before we get into your life, I want to know, how did you survive COVID? I mean, that was quite a time for all of us for the last few years plus, and we're kind of coming out of it. The world's waking up a little bit, not that the virus is gone, but how did you survive that time period, and how did it change the way that not only you live your life, but the way that you conduct business?
Yeah. I first felt like I wasn't surviving COVID. I was in a job I didn't really like, and I had just moved back to the U.S. actually, so I didn't really have any friends. Not that I could have actually seen them, but, for phone conversations or anything, all my friends were in a very different time zone that was only awake when I was at work. And I worked in a clinic, so I was still going into an office. I didn't get any of that fun. Work from home switch going on for me. And I had also been a musician at the time, so all of my gigs were canceled, and I felt very purposeless. I mean, because that was kind of the thing that was making me happy in life, I guess. And I wasn't in love yet. I had been dating before COVID. And then that also became hard when COVID happened. So for me, it just kind of felt like a dead end. It was for almost the first year was a pretty dead end time. But I did begin to do trainings for my business at that point, because I had known already for about 2 years I wanted to start it. And I just started to realize, I have to do something, I have to change something. So what it changed for my business was that I really started. I just got going because it kind of felt like, well, now or never, I need to do something different. And then I did actually meet my husband during COVID. I guess that was probably about the 6 month in point. And then, from there, COVID got a lot better for me. From there, from that point, I was kind of, in a happier place, in a more, I felt more empowered probably, right? I mean, I was working on the business, which is what I wanted to do. And I was, and I was in love. So, things got a little shinier at that point. And from that point on, it's just been kind of a journey of adjusting and building a life too, because I didn't have a life in this country when COVID first hit. So I've kind of built my life here over COVID, like during COVID. And I think what's different about my life now than before COVID, besides just the location, is a lot more time at home. I mean, I used to be somebody who was very much on the go and very much, very social, very, very much everywhere, and traveling, obviously. I was traveling a lot, and doing a lot of schooling and that kind of stuff. I loved certification programs and retreats and things like that. And now it's sort of like simplified, I guess, in a way. Is I go for walks around my neighborhood, right, instead of hiking somewhere, or I spend a lot of time with my husband instead of having, like 5 friend groups that I'm going to see every week. And yeah, just there's kind of a calmness and a slowness, I guess, my pace of life.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of the key to that time, was that the earth slowed down. Everybody kind of danced in unison with what was going on with nature. And so I'm curious, as a dating and intimacy coach, if you were to be in front of a bunch of third graders, and one of them looks up at you, you're at a career day, and one of them looks up and says, "What do you do for a living?" How would you explain it?
I would probably say I help people fall in love. Yes, for a third grade level, I think that's probably the most basic way. Yeah, third graders don't quite know all the problems that can arise
No.
when you take that journey, but I think they do understand the concept of falling in love.
I think when I was in the third grade, a girl convinced me that if you lean against the wall next to a girl and look at her, she can get pregnant. I was like, what? So,
oh, no.
Weird. Yeah, kids are cruel, and you start propagating weird things, and you don't know how any of it works, and you're like, okay, all right, well, then I won't do that because I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was weird. So
did that affect your life?
Not really, no, because
Okay.
I wasn't really, at that point, I was not concerned with anything other than probably just running around in video games, and I was probably afraid of girls then, so it was fine. I was good with it.
You were afraid of girls anyway. It didn't like change you, mean you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was probably more afraid after that than I was before, so it was just kind of threw a monkey wrench into everything. But when you were in the third grade, what did you want to do when you grew up?
I wanted to be a singer. Yeah. So I do get to live that dream a little bit now. Even with COVID, I've become a studio musician. But yeah, that's sort of been from the time I was 5 even, I wanted to be a performer and a singer. So, that it is part of my life, but I also feel this sense of purpose, I guess, around love and helping people create more connection and like the fulfillment of romance and feeling powerful in relationships instead of sad and helpless and like it's not working. So I do get to live my two purposes now, which is nice: the singing and the relationship stuff.
I always find it very interesting with relationship experts and love experts that, we all want love. We all look for companionship in one way or another, but there's so many fundamental things that we do that make it difficult. And I know that I always, there's times where I'll stop and I'll be like, the fact that men and women can even relate and communicate with each other is a miracle in itself because we're so different. It is. It's miraculous.
Yeah.
It's one of the miraculous things of nature. But my curiosity, my question to you is that how is it that we fundamentally make something that should be so rote and easy and almost fundamental for us difficult? How does that happen?
In terms of dating, I think it's because we stake so much on it. I mean, dating the way I describe it is creating a connection, right? It's creating a relationship. And most people have very little problem creating a relationship with friends, for example. Several people do, but, in general, many people are able to create friendships, and we don't feel the same kind of pressure and sort of, it's just less dramatic, right? When we create a friendship, we're like, yeah, I enjoy time with you, and I'm going to go spend more time with you later. And when we come to dating, we bring a lot of assumptions and expectations right from the get-go. We watch every single move and we interpret every single move, and we're trying to figure out what things mean, and we interpret them from our own lens instead of the other person's lens. And it's very dramatic. There's a lot of drama that goes on, and then we get immediately into dysfunctional patterns instead of our, like loving, which even though we're there for love, we let go of our loving patterns, the way we treat people that we love. And we start to get into like control and nitpicking, and people say things in dating that would just shock you, right? Like you're like, you said this to someone you talked to once, it's amazing, and I'm not innocent of this. I also want to be clear. The way I used to date was exactly this way, right? Like we just put so much pressure and kind of focus on like this one person or this one situation, or this one text even. Like we really kind of narrow the field of focus and get very, in honesty, right? It's fear. We get very afraid because we stake so much of our worth and viability in life and love on specific people instead of on experiencing the love that we want to experience. We get into this place of like, they've got to love me right. They may not know how to love you right, but you expect them to love you right away. And it causes a lot of pain for everyone. Really, it causes a lot of pain. Yeah. Yeah,
I get it. So how did you get into this line of work? Going from being a performing artist to getting into, love and intimacy and being somebody that's helping people through a pretty major part of our existences. How did this happen?
Yeah, I was also someone who was terrible at dating. So for the first 15 years of my sort of romantic life, I just experienced many levels of hell with dating. I went through like the ignored phase, just like zero romantic interest. I went through different phases of like trying to date people I didn't want to date. I went through phases of being majorly heartbroken. I went through all of the kind of like emotional unavailability stuff. I went through, the anxiety of wanting to be texted, never being texted. It was just years and years and years, and I really started to feel like maybe I'm not meant for love. And that's just, even though I really, really wanted to be in a relationship and I really wanted to fall in love with somebody who was in love with me and get to experience that kind of a relationship and intimacy and passion and all of that, I was just kind of at this place where maybe it's not meant for me. And I started seeing this guy who wouldn't sleep with me. And that was new for me. And unfortunately, the way that I interpreted that was he doesn't even like me enough to sleep with me. But I was kind of pretty hopeless and didn't actually believe I had choices at that point in dating. So I was just going with it. And sometime about 4 months in, I finally asked him why he wouldn't sleep with me. And he said he was studying some kind of ancient Tibetan sexual technique. And I did not know how to begin to process that. So I just let it go and went home and Googled it later. And that kind of sent me down this rabbit hole of, first of all, sort of energetic relationship work. I never found this technique he was mentioning, by the way, in all of my years of study now.
Wow.
But I did go looking for it. And then besides just the energetic work, I found, relationship coaches, dating coaches, all of this study, like, Esther Perel, potentially, right? Esther Perel and, like all of these, Gary Chapman and all of these sort of relationship experts who write about this stuff, and then also, there's a huge body of scientific work on this as well. It's actually been extensively studied, right? The science of mating and dating, and I just kind of absorbed it. I love learning. That's why I continued to take so many courses throughout my life. And I just was like soaking up all of this new information about relationships. And I never ended up turning that relationship, the relationship I was in at that point, around, but I did end up leaving the country. I was living in Romania at the time, and then I moved to Turkey and started dating there. And, using the information that I had learned, right, using all of the sort of techniques and this kind of awareness of essentially what you pointed to at the beginning of this of this interview is like men think differently than women, right? So allowing that the men I was dating were approaching the situation differently and were thinking differently and were going after sort of the same goal but from a different angle, and just allowing that completely changed everything for me. And I immediately found somebody who was amazing. And, we didn't have very much time together because then I continued traveling, but like I got to experience that, like being in love feeling, like knowing somebody wants you and I wanted them, and, just having so much fun together. And, again, for the first time in my life, I also didn't try to make them the one, and sort of really hold on tightly to that, it's better be you feeling. But I just really enjoyed being in that connection. And then I went on and dated further for the next few years and found it was the same thing. So I developed this system, basically a dating system, using all of these techniques and the knowledge of what's going on, for being a man versus being a woman, and sort of codified it. And I guess the idea behind that was I was kind of like, why doesn't everyone know this? Like, why did it take me 15 years to finally hear this stuff? I spent so many years in so much pain and suffering and confusion and hopelessness, and there was an answer here. Some of the research is new, but a lot of it's not new. And I was just kind of blown away by how effective it was. I mean, and how much it worked and how I had not known it. And I wanted to change that, I guess. So I kind of codified the knowledge in a way that worked for me, that kind of was, I'd also been a teacher for those several years of traveling. So I had this kind of like curriculum building edge. And then I decided I should teach it. I should change from, I was teaching language. I should switch from teaching language to, teach relationship skills and dating skills, which is where the idea for my business first sparked up. And, so I've been doing that now for 3 years, and it has been sort of this incredibly gratifying work, and it just really made my life clear in many ways. I mean, and now being in a relationship, I actually still do the relationship work, right? It's not actually something that ends ever. So it's sort of this beautiful like life journey that I'm on, and then I get to share it with other people now too, which is the best. It's the best part. So yes, and I've also actually written a book, which is coming out in April, sharing my system, so I can hopefully continue that mission that occurred to me of like, why don't people know about this? So yeah,
that's wonderful. Yeah. So who's been a hero or a role model for you in your life?
In life in general, let's see. So many, so many people. I mean, starting in early life, I had a teacher all the way from 1st through 8th grade. So she was kind of my first role model of what it meant to be an adult and be, I mean, obviously at that point, being 7 to 13, it's like being the best kind of adult possible. And yeah, I really feel I owe a lot to her in terms of how I learned to be in the world and how I learned to feel seen and appreciated by other people. She was definitely an amazing teacher, right? She was one of these teachers who does see everybody and helps everyone sort of be their best self. And that was incredibly formative for me. And then I think in college I had sort of a mentor who was Romanian, and he was a former actor and had this sort of incredible life where he had escaped from Romania at the end of communism when everything was falling apart there. That's how I ended up in Romania, by the way, is he got me a job there. And yeah, I don't know, he just had this kind of like energy and belief in the world. It's super creative, lots of creativity. And he had met all kinds of people. And in fact, he's the one who got me back into singing because he had grown up with one of Romania's top pop stars. And so he took me to her. He came to visit Romania too. He lives in the US, but he had come to visit Romania and introduced me to her. Then it turned out she had a vocal school, so I started going to her vocal school. And yeah, I mean, I guess his influence was just incredibly meaningful to me. And then in more recent years, I mean, since I've gotten into the coaching world, it's been there are a lot of people.
No, I think
learning so much.
Yeah, and I think that really covers it. I think like these seminal people that really kind of led you to discover yourself and define yourself. And I'm curious with the amount of work that you do where you have to really give of yourself and you're really helping people out. At the end of the proverbial day, how do you quantify a good day?
I guess for me, it's mainly a feeling. Yeah. I mean, I tend to measure things by productivity. I'll be honest with you. One of those people, I love to check things off lists. But there is sort of this feeling of enoughness. And it usually has to do with, I'm very social, right? So it's like, did I touch, lives today, essentially? So generally that's like, did I have a meeting or a class or a few of those that all went well, a lovely podcast interview. And then sort of like, did I finish what I really wanted to finish, right? That's a wonderful day for me. Yeah, it's connection and purpose, I guess. Those are the two things. Did I have connection? Did I have purpose?
What's been one of the best client responses you've ever gotten from the work you've done?
This changed my life. I mean, yeah, you can't beat that. Can't beat that. It's yeah. When someone else experiences what I did, and suddenly this kind of opening of like, oh yeah, like I get to make love happen for myself. Like that's, yeah, nothing better.
So if you can meet anybody on the planet right now and talk to them, who would you love to meet?
I'd love to meet Esther Perel. Yeah, I'd love to meet Esther Perel. Her work was sort of my entry point to the scientific side of relationship building, and yeah, I just think it's fascinating.
Everyone out there has a perception of you, an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your clients, but ultimately you live your life. You have a perception of you. Who do you think you are?
Ooh, I think I'm pretty complex. I think I'm very complex to answer in a phone call. But I guess the way I perceive myself is as having, well, again, complex, right? Many sides. I have many moods. I have many aspects of myself. I have many personalities, right? Different ways of being in the world, different responses. In general, I would say, my sort of go-to, I guess, is that I'm again very social. It's basically the things we've mentioned in this interview already. Is I'm very social. I am very loving. I love to spend time with people. I'm very, very thoughtful, I guess, in a way. Like I love to learn things. I love facts. I love to be engaged in information and ideas. I'm pretty energetic. I love things like performing. I love things like expressing myself with my voice and creating new things, like in terms of writing a book. and I love being around people who are also have that creative energy. Other than that, it kind of, I guess I believe people have most things inside of them, right? I think people have sort of many more aspects than they're even expressing in most cases. Yeah, but those are my very obvious, I think when people talk about, because I've been in these spaces where we talk about what shows up in a room when you do, like those are the things that usually come forward. I have a pretty energetic social lean.
Right on. So if anyone out there wants to learn more about you, your services, anything related to your book, anything related to your world, where's the best place for them to go?
My website, Sovereign, which is a long word to spell. It's SOVEREIGN, and then dating.com. And you should find the magic there.
Wonderful. Hey, this has been great. Thank you for opening up. Thanks for taking time out. Have a great 2023 and good luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Joe. The same for you.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, dating, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube, also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.